Now, if you've been following the channel, you'll know that back on April the 2nd, myself, Liga and John headed off up country and took on the Reading half marathon. Now, it had been a long time since I'd taken on any big road races, and when I say a long time, it was about 6 years ago. Training hadn't really gone to plan, and if you watched our full race day video, then you'll know it didn't really turn out how I wanted it to. So I thought in today's video, we'll give you guys a full breakdown of how it unfolded on the day at Reading Half Marathon. Welcome back everyone, I'm Lloyd Purvis and this is Run4Adventure. Hope everybody is fit and well out there in YouTube world, and thanks for joining us for another video. So we're going to dive straight into the race and we're going to talk all about preparation first. So I've been building the training miles up again after the disappointment of the Arc of Attrition, and I'd actually been lacing up my road shoes again and getting out on the hard stuff for some quality structured sessions, just to try and get my legs turning over a bit quicker, but also to build up a bit of speed endurance. About 3 weeks out from the race, I'd gradually been building my weekly training miles up to about 40 miles a week, and a couple of the challenging interval sessions had gone really well, and I was actually really surprised with how much speed I had left in my legs, and that definitely gave me a lot of confidence going into the race, and maybe made me a little bit deluded about what time I could achieve on the day. Obviously, getting through a tough challenging interval session and coming out the other side feeling really positive is very different to holding a quick pace over a 13.1 mile road half marathon route. Saying that, I was still pretty confident that with another couple of weeks of good training under my belt, I could dip in under that 1 hour 30 time that I was hoping for at Reading. And with everything that's been going on over the last couple of years, the niggles, the injuries, the lack of consistent training, especially out there on the hard stuff, I would have been really happy with that time. Still quite a long way off my half marathon PB, but it would definitely have been a good starting block for things to come later in the year. Unfortunately, I didn't get those extra 2 weeks of training in my legs because I was out on a Tuesday night with the TNT crew on the Towns here in Hale. Just a really nice, steady social run, running down one of the Towns there, and I started to get this funny feeling on the outside of my lower left leg. It's a feeling I've had before, so I stopped running straight away and then continued the walk of shame home. Nothing worse than walking home dressed in a full running kit, but I just wanted to be on the safe side because I knew Reading Half Marathon was just around the corner. Over the next 2 weeks, I did lots of body maintenance stuff, so lots of rolling, the massage gun, I got in the myo pumps trying to flush everything through that lower leg, trying to get as much recovery as possible. But if I'm honest, it still felt really tight after all of that. Luckily, I'd already booked in an appointment with my brilliant sports massage therapist, Kate, so went and had treatment. It was a very painful treatment, but the outcome was positive. She loosened everything off and she couldn't feel any damage in there, which was a real good thing. And we just put it down to the fact that I'd upped the mileage, a lot more intensity in that training back on the road environment. And it'd been a long time since I'd pushed hard on the tarmac, and I'd kind of forgot how brutal it can be on the body. So after the treatment, everything felt a lot better. That lower leg was way looser than before, but I was still a little bit worried about running on it building up to race weekend, so I didn't run a step the 2 weeks before Reading. I did lots of stretching, lots of massaging, but no running at all. And looking back at that, maybe that wasn't the best idea, but at the time, I thought it was the safest option to make sure that I got to that start line at Reading. Race morning came around and we had had a great trip up country and we were all raring to go. So I stuck to the plan, I grabbed a banana, had a cup of coffee in the morning, and then we headed off to Reading Town Football Club. We were fortunate enough that we were being hosted by the event sponsors Unleashed Performance, and they'd put on an amazing hospitality suite for all of their runners, so we had an area where we could get prepared, get our kit on and leave our bags safely. So it took a lot of pressure off us in the morning before the race. After a quick warm-up with the Unleashed crew, we headed off to the start line, and at Reading Half Marathon, there's quite a long walk to get to the start line. So I did a bit of jogging, a few activation exercises along the way, trying to keep warm because it was a pretty chilly morning. Unfortunately, myself and Liga are in two different coloured starting pens. So when you register for Reading, you have to put down a predictive time, and then that gives you your starting position. So Liga headed off to the green pen, and myself and John made our way to the red pen. And by the time we got there was only 10 minutes to go until race time. Whilst myself and John were chatting away in the pen, out the corner of my eye, I actually saw the 1 hour 30-minute pacer with his like big black flag on his back. So I worked through the crowds and I positioned myself just in front of him because, you know, the plan was if I stay here, I don't let him pass, then I'm going to achieve the time I want. And, you know, that all sounded pretty straightforward at the time, or so I thought. Like at a lot of big road races, there was a lot of runners squeezed into a small area, and as that gun went off, the first 500 yards was pretty chaotic, and I spent most of the time looking down at my feet, trying not to trip up a curb or dodging other runners. But eventually the crowd sort of spread out a bit and you could find your own space in the race and try and get in that nice sort of relaxed rhythm that you want at the start of a half marathon. Miles 1 and 2 went past pretty quick. So mile 1, 6:43, mile 2, 6:45. So bang on track and feeling pretty good about everything. If I said I wasn't worried about those lower leg issues I was having before, I would be lying because they were definitely playing on my mind. I didn't have a clue how they were going to react to that quicker tempo, up in the pace, especially on the road. Also because I hadn't run in the 2 weeks before the race. Now, anyone that has run Reading Half Marathon knows that there's a hill coming up at mile 3 or just before mile 3. Now, I'd had quite a few viewers and runners that had run the race before telling me, oh, be careful, watch that hill early on in the race. It's a tough one. And to be honest, it wasn't much of a hill and I was up and over it before I even realised I was there. The good thing about going up is you've got to come down the other side. So I went through mile 4 at 6:36 miling, and it was actually the quickest mile for me in the race. It was just after that mile when my mind started to sort of spark up and I was wondering whether I could hold this pace for the duration of the race because my legs were feeling quite heavy already and I was a little bit sluggish. So I reached into the belt, grabbed out my first gel. So I planned to take one at 4.5 miles and 9.5 miles. So I was getting that gel in quickly. As I was doing that, the 1 hour 30-minute pacer actually overtook me. I finished the gel, I didn't panic, I just tucked in behind him and I thought I'll just sit behind him for a while, let that gel work its magic and then hopefully I can kick on past him, have a strong second half to the race. Unfortunately, it really didn't play out like that. Mile 5 and 6 came and went and that pacer was only sort of 50, 100 yards ahead of me and I still managed to hold good pace. So went through mile 5 at 6:50, mile 6 at 6:42. So I was still on track to try and hit that sub 1 hour 30-minute time and then I just fell off a cliff. My legs went really tight, my quads felt like they'd turned to concrete and it was just really hard work to lift my feet up and turn my legs over. And it was at this moment in time, we were only halfway, there was still another 10k to go and I knew this was going to turn into a very painful experience. Mile 7 was a very disappointing 7:23 mile and I remember looking down at my watch and urging myself to up the tempo, pick up the pace, push harder, but I really didn't have any more to give at that moment in time and I knew that it just become a case of damage control and I was gritting my teeth and digging super deep just to keep hold of sort of 7:20 miling. Miles 8 and 9 were pretty bad if I'm honest, but there was definitely worse miles to come. So I reached into my belt, grabbed out that last gel, got it down super quick and just crossed my fingers and was kind of hoping for a miracle that it was going to put some spring back into my steps, some life back into my legs and I was going to run really hard all the way to the finish line. It definitely didn't work out that way. I did manage to push hard, but I couldn't up the pace. It really was a case of just gritting my teeth and hanging on to the finish line. So mile 9 was a 7:21, mile 10 was a 7:26, then a 7:25, and mile 12 was a 7:28. And I was giving everything I had just to try and keep that pace to sub 7:30 miling. I was having those constant battles with that negative voice in my head. It was saying, "What are you doing this, Lloyd? Stop suffering. Chill out, relax, run slower, sit down, take the weight off your feet." I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced that within a race at some point. And then I saw the glorious sign that I've been waiting for, 800 meters to go. Now, normally this would give you a big boost of energy, lots of endorphins, and you would tear off to the finish line, but that didn't happen on the day of Reading Half, and it really was just a get to the finish line moment. As I made my way through the tunnel and down into that epic finish in the stadium, I kind of plodded around the outside of the football pitch there towards the finish line, and I'd always wanted to finish a race in a big stadium like this, and I'd kind of thought it would be a kind of Chariots of Fire moment, slow motion, sprinting towards the finish line, saluting to the crowd, and unfortunately it really wasn't like that on the day. But you know, I was happy to get over that finish line in one piece, no niggles, at a time of 1 hour 33 minutes, and I was just really pleased with myself that I battled those demons in my head and I clung on and got it done on the day. So what did I learn from going back to the roads and racing? Well, number one, I am definitely not as fit as I used to be. Number two, I really do need to get in a lot more road specific training just to condition the body and the mind for that harsh road racing environment. Number three, the 2 weeks off of no running before the race really didn't help. I should have definitely got in a couple of steady runs beforehand, because it was a real big shock to the system and my legs come race day morning. And last but not least, once all the sort of pain and suffering had died down, I realised I'd really missed road racing, especially those big city races where you have all that great atmosphere in the morning, you're running with all those other runners, and you've got the incredible support as you make your way around the route. So we'll definitely be doing some more road racing later in the year. I think the biggest thing I'm going to take away from my Reading experience is I'd forgotten how road racing is a complete different level of suffering compared to, say, a 50-mile trail race or a long race in the mountains. Obviously, the duration of the suffering is a lot shorter, but it is way more intense because, you know, when you start to dig in and things start to get hard and painful, you have to keep running. You have to keep forcing yourself to push all the way to the finish line, and mentally that's really tough to do. Whereas when you're doing a long trail race, sooner or later you're going to come to a hill, you can stop running, you can walk that hill, try and get in some recovery, take some calories, but also relax when it comes to that mental focus, and I think that really helps. Obviously, when you're taking on long distances like, say, 100 miles, you can be in a world of hurt for hours and hours and hours, but I do think it is a slightly more watered down level of suffering. Obviously, I struggled on the day at Reading, but I knew in the grand scheme of life, it was only going to be for 30 or 40 minutes, and I could hang on in there. But I really do think I've missed out on that intense suffering, so we're going to be doing more road racing later in the year, because I think it can really help build strong mental toughness when running a long way, and can really help you through those sort of dark times you sometimes go through when you're taking on challenging ultras. So there you have it, that's how it went down at Reading Half Marathon, and even though my race didn't go to plan, I'm so glad we went up, run the event, and that my body got through it unscathed. Although I've got to say, my legs were trashed for a whole week afterwards. My quads were so tight and so sore, I couldn't really believe it. Liga had a great time away, run round the route with a big smile on her face, and jumped over the finish line for a sub 2 hour finish, so she was dead chuffed with that. And we got to say a massive thanks to Unleashed Performance, because they looked after us so well over the weekend. But for now, we are going to be heading back to the trails, preparing for a race that's coming up later in the year, and actually a race that we haven't mentioned on the channel before, but it might involve traveling overseas, so keep your eyes peeled for more information to come on that. But for now, guys, thanks for watching, thanks for supporting the channel, it's always appreciated. Don't forget, if you are enjoying the content, to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and as always, stay safe and keep on running. Then you'll know that the race didn't really turn out how I wanted it to. I could have still just dipped in after. Saying that, I was still pretty confident that with a couple of more. Like I said, at the time I thought, great, brilliant pan. Brilliant pan. It was a brilliant pan.